Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Greg Olmo with Key Performance Ideas, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, Oracle FDMEE. Today's webinar is presented by Cullen Caballero. Cullen is an Oracle Hyperion certified consultant with extensive experience implementing the full life cycle of EPM solutions, from design, project management, implementation, administration, analysis, and reporting development. His experience also spans across several industries with companies of all sizes. Recognized for his analytic skills, he delivers complex solutions to clients in support of their strategic goals. Thank you, Cullen, for joining us today.
Sure thing. Hey, thanks for having me here, Greg. I appreciate it, and thanks everyone for taking out really time from your schedules today and joining us really in this next topic in the Key Performance Ideas webinar series. So my name is Cullen Caballero. I will navigate us through really today's topic, Oracle FDMEE. The goal of today's topic is really to educate, socialize for you guys, and provide answers to really some of the most basic data integration questions around EPM. So we'll cover a few things. We'll talk through the EPM data integration. We'll walk through the where and really the why for FDMEE as a tool. We'll have a look at the migration points and considerations now that we know you may or may not know the news around FDM Classic to FDMEE. And then we'll kind of round out the webinar here with some keys to success based on some experience and also utilizing that inside of the capabilities of FDMEE. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So the data integration options, really the first thing I like to cover here are the options to be available inside of EPM. So we have native ERP and EPM application product utilities. So these are integration methods that are out of the box application modules and utilities like the HFM native loads, Smart View loads, native planning, S-Base loads, things that you're familiar with. Like web form loads as well. So they have plenty of format constraints if you do it from an outside file, and really some heartache when it comes to interacting with outside feeder systems. So there's really no integration directly with the product. On to the ODI custom integrations here. So ODI it's really a comprehensive tool, integration platform. It covers high volume, event-driven. It's SOA enabled. It gives you some trickle feed integration processes. And it's primarily driven by the IT department. That's something to note, not necessarily by the business user. The custom routines can be useful when talking about supplementing non-financial data like operations into S-Base that we've seen, or planning, and even looking to integrate processes outside of finance into the global concept of data governance. So it does play a key role. Usually it's provided to the customer at no cost, which is always good, and ODI can also be useful in supplementing the EPM solution with metadata feeds, automation, and staging areas to sync and map master data from around the enterprise. So ERPI, its sole purpose was to allow users to integrate metadata and data from the ERP source system into the target app. So it introduced really the most seamless approach to drill through in conjunction with metadata loads directly using master data from the ERP. So it began the conversation about write back and budget data, and that came on early on, really from the ERP system directly back from the EPM system. So you're loading budget data, writing back into the ERP. So that was a huge step in the industry and allowed really us as implementers and the user community to really start asking new questions about the total integration of data. So that leads us to the next generation of ERPI, FDM Classic, and ODI. FDM combines ERPI and FDM into a single product. It's streamlined pretty much everything. So it's primarily run by the business, and it is the strategic tool for all EPM data integrations by Oracle. So it identifies how source account strings and master data. So some examples of those are cost center, business units, trading partners, of how they actually translate into your EPM application dimensionality. Data load rules are a new piece of this. Also some offline batch processing that allows FDMEE to reuse integration definitions that you may have period after period. So that's going to do nothing but speed up your close process. There's no re-engagement there. Reporting outside of FDM is also a key component that is increasing, thankfully, into a more robust by introducing the BI Publisher as a tool to modify out-of-the-box reports. It also allows us to create new reports, which is unable to do in the past. You had to copy and modify, and that includes audit components as well as transactional records. So into the architecture, where does it really fit? So to note here, FDM continues to be the hub of all EPM data integrations. So that is something new here, is introducing the on-prem versus the cloud, and now we can actually say that there's a comparable hybrid integration that's happening. So let's start with the data sources here. So let's go and draw some photos here. So let's talk about this section here, and let's talk about down here. The data sources, full list of data sources come from your ERP system. So that could be an enterprise warehouse that you have your data stored from. That's eBiz, 11i, also JDE. Also on the eBiz side, real quick, the version 11i and version 12 is available for full integration with drill through. Fusion Financials is a piece. PeopleSoft 9 and Commitment Control on PeopleSoft side is available. These are prepackaged plugins. On the SAP has been brought into the fold. That brings in your profit center, cost center, vendor balances, all pieces of the ERP financial, as well as BW on the business warehouse side of SAP. JDE and human resource data that can also be pumped in from PeopleSoft on the human capital management side. So this is all great. The thing that has really been a game changer here is that it also, FDME also provides room and support for an open interface adapter. So this really allows you to integrate any source system and really any external system as part of your overall solution. So next we want to talk about the targets. So if we have part of your stack today, if you have multiple EPM applications and multiple targets, then we're really talking about the component here inside of the stack. So full list of this on the target side. Now, the ones that I list off here are going to be for EPMA and for the classic deployment of your metadata. So this is HFM, this is planning, this is public sector planning and budgeting. Also the SBase, both cubes options for SBase, ASO and BSO. HPCM is new, ARM is new, and finally you really get into what we have here on the cloud side, on the on-prem. So that's Fusion Cloud, that's PBCS, and of course that's all the custom applications. So coming at it from different points of view here, so from an admin perspective, the first thing we want to know is really what we're responsible for as admins is to make sure that we have good data all from these sources here. So whether you have Excel files or you have other EPM applications that need to be brought in, all of that needs to come in to FDMEE and a single point of here. So once this all comes in, we have a transformation that actually happens here. That transformation is really your mapping that gets churned up, logic can get applied, and then there's a final validation that happens right before it's sent out and exported into either your on-prem or your cloud-based solution. From that point, the administrative action is really data validation. So you send it off to your accountants or your controllers and make sure everything is in place there. So from a user perspective, we'll kind of go backwards and we get to introduce something called drill through. So the business user starts here. Really their first way into the app is from SmartView. SmartView is an add-in inside of Excel. And FR is the pixel perfect view of your report. So that's where your 10Ks and 10Qs come from. So a user's first view into the system or even the data and the enterprise is really from maybe a 10K, 10Q perspective, a total P&L, looking at a summary balance sheet, a detailed balance sheet. Once they do some analytics and they really want to start diving into the values, that's whenever you get down to the lower levels inside your applications. Once you're inside the application, drill through becomes applicable. From a drill back perspective, you're then now drilling back into that source transaction. So say that we saw a number in revenue and it kind of looks kind of weird, and so we found the business unit, we found the cost center, we found the legal entity of what we need to go to. So we drill down to the bottom of the bottom, and we'll get into the details a little bit further in the presentation, but we get down to the very base point of view level, and that drops us into a landing page inside of FDMEE. Now, the thing here that's important is that may be a single record at the base level inside of, say, HFM, but there are multiple, say, call it 10, 20 different records that may come from any one of these sources all around the world, and we'll need to unravel what that may have happened from FDMEE's perspective. So FDMEE gives us not only the visibility, but it gives us reports showing the audit trails all the way through what that user's experience would be. So there's no more swivel chair. There's no more going from one product to the other. It's a seamless single integration across the solution. So evolution. We've come from somewhere. FDMEE has evolved quite a bit. And so let's go through some sources and targets. The ledger mapping, user interfaces, some drill back, drill through, which I touched on just a little bit, security, migration, and also metadata. So sources and targets prior to ERPI, the flat files and SQL integrations really were it. So after that, early on, FDM was turned into the de facto tool of what was brought in to load data into HFM. So once the other applications like planning, SBase, HPCM, Close Manager, and ARM, they quickly became part of the picture as they are today. So in the latest version, most of those targets are actually sources. So something that we looked in the architecture side, that allows for advances in technology like data sync. So ledger mapping as part of it as well is transformation, really is at the heart of what FDMEE sets out to do. Ledger mapping is possible by way really of breaking down the source system chart field elements. It takes them and organizes them, and it actually changes them into something compatible that would load into your target EPM application. So it's only used, historically it was, started as a one-to-one relationship. There wasn't really any wildcard mapping or any complex logic that could be applied. But now, FDMEE is really pushing to see how many ETL functions it can actually execute. So one of those components that it's really pushing the envelope in is multidimensional maps, and those are really the latest improvements of that validate step that you may be familiar with in FDM Classic. User interface, usability of that tool, of any tool really is paramount when we talk about creating buy-in from the user community. So this goes for the administrators as well who are going to be using the tools. FDM, it really no longer requires any need of a thick client, which is great on the administration side. It doesn't need to be on the admin's desktop, and it doesn't require a separate URL as part of the application. So the new FDMEE is fully integrated 100% directly into the workspace, and it houses all of the integrations. So regardless of the target app or the scenario that you're loading, it's all in one spot, all in one place. So from a metadata perspective, this came online and relatively new and has really taken off and become a major player. This is the thing to look out for whenever you're integrating metadata. So whenever you integrate hierarchies directly from your ERP, whether that be eBiz or Fusion Financials or PeopleSoft, once you load those hierarchies directly from the GL, it's basically need to look out for a few things I just want to give you a heads up on. So duplicate member names is something to be watching for. Naming restrictions, comprehensive review of your required member properties. Properties has been a big one here. ODI has been a good help on the metadata integrations piece of this. And then finally, really any duplication in your alias or descriptions. Drill back, drill through, and write back. These are three new terms that have been brought out in the last couple of years. So drill back is a term that has been basically replaced by drill through, and it only pertains to the ability to look backwards from the application into FDMEE. So drill through is what we're talking about now as far as what the term we're using to get from that application all the way back in the transaction system. So that was initially integrated with the EBS adapter. That was back in version 9. It then evolved and scaled into other systems called ERPI. Once ERPI was introduced, it really expanded how you look from your summary financials, drilling down into the details of the target, and then further expanded the view to display that data directly in the source system. So that's where drill through really came from. Now, write-back is currently available in actuals and budget. Write-back started on the budget side. So this is writing data back into your GL. The suggested approach to write back in the ERPM systems and the other legacy application is to extract the data into a custom app or a data file and then converting them to a format acceptable in the ERP system. So this is no longer the case with write back. So there's a direct integration of if you have data that's manually inputted inside of planning and you want to put that data back into your ERP, that's fully supported now. So security. The one thing to note about security here that I want to make clear is something maybe that was taken for granted back in the past when data integration was first coming online with HFM, was that this is a multi-user application. So each segment around the globe can be responsible for their own integration, start to finish, no problem. It's not a single admin sitting at a desktop with a thick client and a hard to use interface. That's a thing of the past. So you can deploy this thing all over the world. It can be controlled centrally or it can be controlled at the very location level. So this is all within the same construct of the EPM workspace. So it's all in one spot. Security used to be native to FDM, but it has since been integrated into the security hub, which you may or may not be familiar with, but shared services. So you can kind of see this pattern from Oracle to move everything into one global space, and that being the workspace. Migration, we're going to dive into some depths of the migration and upgrade, really. But right now, it's really a hot topic, and there are many different approaches that can now be taken to move applications from one environment to the other. So from dev to QA, QA to prod, and then prod maybe back down to dev to make sure you have a good copy. So in the past, migration, unfortunately, was very manual, and it was tedious. It was just very difficult to initiate. So you had server-level settings. You had, black box-like properties to be searched for and modified on the server level. And then so now, thankfully, Oracle has now integrated LCM, Lifecycle Management, for most of the objects, and the process of migration continually improves with each release. The .200 release that just came out gave us some significant improvements there. So why FDM? So give me some business reasons of why we actually need it. Why does it help? If you have disparate source systems, this is a key element because we can take in multiple sources, system types based on all the IT groups and global organization, anything that you may have. So businesses also see challenges with inconsistent account structures. So a multinational company, say, may have multiple account structures in a single ERP, or multiple instances within a single ERP type, or maybe even a bundle of ERPs that could be totally unrelated across the globe. So FDMEE really takes this into account to give that consistency, and that's the transformation piece that we talked about earlier. So it grabs errors in data, metadata collection, the financial restatement. So this is when you have a repeatable, highly agile system that's in place. It's really handy. It basically tells you what has been done. So whenever those restatements happen and they don't have necessarily very good controls, which is the next point, it makes it really difficult without a central tool. So around those weak controls, really data governance is kind of what we talk about here in the world of Excel and emails, and it's most of the times very cumbersome and time-consuming. We offer here an admin or controller can provide parameters and tolerance for each one of these processes, and of course the big one here is accountability from start to finish, either at the local level or a global level. So companies today have a lack of visibility into their process and controls. Reporting is where FDM solves for this, so it could be down to a particular user that we're secured or a group of users in a region, or of course it could always be taken care of at a global level. So another thing that we see a lot is we have a hard time finding synchronization between the ERP and the EPM. Sometimes it's two different teams that are not in agreement. This solution in FDMEE allows you to fully know what happened, when it happened, to make sure that a single person has visibility all the way through the process. If you have a situation where you have updated transactions and journals in the source, you want that to be as quickly as possible pushed into your target. So alleviating data governance issues, let's take one dive deeper there. So the collection and transformation is important. You want everything on the same page. You want a repeatable process, run the same integration for each period throughout the year. Once data changes are made or mapping changes are made, you want to be able to capture that and get better every period, not reproduce the same thing every period. Very costly. Documented internal controls, so a couple of reports just to keep note of. There's a report, some names I want to just pass out to you, like account chase. There's an account chase with wildcards, map monitor. Actually, that was improved this time, the map monitor. That's by location and also user. And then the intersection drill down. So the audit trails within the drill through and the ability to write back to source systems really help us alleviate those data governance issues. So here are the benefits. The benefits, we have increased confidence in the data, decreased confidence in compliance, decreased cost of compliance, and then elimination of data integrity risk, documented and defined repeatable process, and of course, improved cycle times during the periodic process. So let's go through some features. We drill down into some features that are newly available, some things that have been available that may be taken for granted a little bit. The universal adapter, this enables you to integrate external sources and tables and views, so DBAs will really like this. It allows you to bypass the open interface table. So this feature allows the user, not the admin necessarily, but the user to easily connect to any source where they have access to underlying database tables. So this is a big feature there. The on-premise or cloud-enabled integration. So you'll see inside of FDMEE, it allows you for a local or a cloud deployment there. So Oracle Focus really is honed in on integrating all sources and targets across the cloud and the on-prem ecosystems. So anywhere in the EPM stack, they want data information to flow easily anywhere up and down that architecture. So the hybrid and what they're calling the advanced approach, it will enable EPM applications to be interactive and also share information between each other. It also allows EPM customers to adapt cloud deployments into their existing EPM on-prem portfolio. So that's a key component that you're actually moving forward and don't have to just scrap everything and start over. Write back is also included in local and cloud integrations, and the types of integrations that it supports. So on-prem ERP apps from the supported source over to the cloud. You have on-prem EPM applications to Oracle Cloud. You have Oracle Cloud to on-prem EPM apps, and you also have Oracle Cloud to eBiz and PeopleSoft. And then finally, Oracle Cloud can be integrated to the on-prem external sources like a data warehouse. So Jython scripting, basically has its own language. So FDMEE introduced really one big significant change. So Jython is a scripting language. Previously, it was VB or VB script, and the EPM sites are really moving toward becoming fully independent of any one platform, and really Jython introduces a key component and has VB is really dependent on its Microsoft technology. So from an Oracle perspective, Jython is a clear choice as Oracle is really heavily vested in Java. They own Java. So it is actually superior to the VB scripting language. There's a new import format builder that's now available. So this is for your file-based data loads. Concatenating, for those who are actually loading metadata, concatenating the source dimensions for the ERP segments, that's been expanded. So previously it was only allowing us to concatenate the limit of 5 segments, but now we have an unlimited number. Report translation, so now you can view report descriptions and parameters in the language that you select. We have improved reports for map monitoring. I alluded to this earlier. So it actually enables, you can enable a map audit setting. So once you say yes to create audit records in that map monitor report, The default value comes out as no, just an FYI. So once you flip this on, it allows you to not only look at the monitoring the mapping for locations, but also the by user. The purging script allows instant cleanup of any stale files or folders. So you can run a system process to maintain and clean up all runtime artifacts. These are, you may be familiar with some of these. There's process tables and staging tables in the inbox and outbox folders. This really clogs up how much storage you can have there. So this purge script feature cleans up all of that space for you. Data synchronization. So data synchronization enables you to synchronize and map data between EPM source and target apps. Does not matter of the dimensionality of the application. It simply is selecting the source and the target application. So it's a one-time sync. Consider it this way. Consider it a one-way sync between your ledger or also between your EPM applications. So let me give you an example of data sync real quick. So one of the most common monthly tasks is to copy actuals from HFM over to planning for the variance reporting. So data sync makes this very easy, leveraging all those other benefits in FDMEE as well. So right back, we talked about this a couple times. Data is imported for the budget and actual scenario back to the GL. There's a new fixed mapping feature. So this brings us to really parity, full parity inside of the mapping for FDM Classic, but you are allowed to fix the maps basically as instantaneously as the errors come through. If you are loading exchange rates currently either from a third-party tool or you're manually inputting those exchange rates for EBS and PeopleSoft only, so this is actually available as part of your direct integration into FDMEE. The POV locking by location. So this allows you, administrators and end users can be restricted really to posting data for a particular period or category. So that means that the users at that point, a user or a group of users, cannot import, validate, or export and actually rerun anything in there. So it becomes a read-only activity from that point. So this is especially important in the journal security. So if this is on, the users are really restricted and can only post journals to the FDM global POV. So this helps manage the user's ability to load and make adjustments during the close, which you don't want to do. There are lots of enhanced internal controls in the reports that we talked about earlier, and one thing I wanted to mention here is really the Excel interface component. This actually helps with the migration as well, but I want to give you a couple of tables that you want to look at. So TData Map holds all of your mappings globally across the application. You can look at them by location, which is called a POV partition ID. And also TData Seg holds all of your current data and your historical data. So those are two examples I wanted to pass your way. If you want to look at them from a FDMEE database repository level, that's going to be really good. So if you're an administrator listening to this presentation, check that one out because you'll be using that for mass updates or pulling any kind of validation that you might have. So big news, FDM Classic is no more. So legacy FDM will not be available starting in release 11.124, which is out. .200 was just released. So when you upgrade to 11.124, you will need to migrate from FDM Classic into FDMEE. So just a couple of tips here. You will want to take a good assessment of the current process you have. There are folks that call it a lift and shift or a reconstruct versus a hybrid. So there is no lift and shift from one to the next. It will either be a total redesign, reconstruction manually, which can be done, or you can also use a hybrid approach, which uses the migration utility as well as some manual components. 9 times out of 10, and some will say 10 out of 10, you will be using a hybrid. So we always go with a hybrid on our perspective because you really want to manually construct some things, and the migration utility has the good, the bad, and of course the workarounds that need to be integrated with that. So some of the workarounds, which are both good and bad, it just depends how you use them. You're going to want to use Excel. You're going to want to use SQL, have someone that's proficient inside of SQL and also ODI as complements to your overall process of migrating. So once you go through that, you're going to want to consider new features well ahead of time to simplify your existing process. So using the Excel interface upload feature that we talked about just now, that can also reduce some application rebuild. So if an administrator can export location detail from Classic to Excel, and then you can just upload that directly into FDMEE. And if you have 100 locations or 500 locations or even 50, that will be really some quick work to save some time. Multi-dimensional mappings, this is a new feature that you want to consider because this can really reduce the complexity of any import formats or scripting. And it also can increase your efficiency to maintain the mapping. So as an administrator, using multi-dimensional mappings will actually help you fighting through that code that you may have. So FDM and FDMEE can be run in parallel in 11.123. So what that means is that Oracle has released a patch to migrate a standalone FDM Classic app to an FDMEE version. One thing to note, if you're on 11.123 Classic and you want to migrate over to 11.123 FDMEE, this migration utility does not support that. So if you are on FDM version 11.1.1 or 11.1.2 and you want to get over to 1.2.3, that's not supported. This migration utility is only moving from 11.1.1 all the way up to 11.1.2.4. So if you are moving in 11.1.2.3, it's actually not supported, and we're going to have to do everything manually. So I just want to make a quick note of that one. So the utility pulls over most of the artifacts, but not all of them. So the actual data values come from tdata seg. That's going to be a critical table that you're going to want to look from. You can use some SQL statements to look at validation. That's going to be really useful to reconcile there. If you're on ERPI, upgrade up to FDMEE, only 11.1.2 is supported if you are using with FDM. And the next thing I want to show you is what is actually migrated with the utility. So you've got your target app, your global categories, application categories, global periods, application periods, logic groups, all of these things here to go down the list, all the way down to your data mappings. All that is pulled over systematically, but you're going to want to take a pretty good hard look at what you're actually going to be considering, or take a look at what you want to redesign. So this is a great opportunity in a project to reevaluate your overall system as it comes with data integration. So I wanted to put down a couple things for you to consider. So the migration, whenever the utility runs, it does not delete or modify any objects within it, and it only merges. So make sure ODI is installed. You're going to want to use that. The historical data can be migrated. They actually have an opportunity here with historical data. If you have a ton of historical data and you just want to pull over some of it, you can actually put in a period range of from what to what that you want to pull over. So that makes it really easy. The bulk of your project will be around scripting. So moving from Visual Basic Scripts over to Jython is really where you're going to be seeing most of the move there as far as the time committed and cost. So go ahead and use the Jython-based expressions and the mapping scripts after the migration. Do all that after you pull everything over using utility. So a couple of things that are not migrated, and this is not, of course, not a comprehensive list by any means, but the certification and assessment does not come over in FDMEE at all. The reason is because that functionality is now in FCM. So it's actually in the close manager piece. And FCM is now compatible inside of FDMEE. So you can run data loads from FCM that launch your process as part of your overall close strategy. The tax adapter didn't come over, the timeline didn't come over, and then the enterprise adapter did not come over either. The batch processing did come over, so if you want to do a lights out process, that is available utilizing Excel, which we talked about. Manually, you have to convert those scripts. And then if you want to really save some time on the validation, you're going to want to do that inside of SQL. So that's going to help you reconcile what's been brought over versus where you want to be. So I'll end with this. Thanks you guys for joining. Some keys to success, really just keep it simple. So whenever you plan through, I want you to really think about planning a good, clean design. Design those defining integrations in a single repository and running those as a repeatable process. So if you keep those as your watchwords, you'll be in good shape. Knowing your options is always key, knowing what you have in front of you. So make sure you think about a secure and controlled access of all your data. Make sure your application features all line up. Know your tools that you get to know which tools are available, know which tools you want to integrate ahead of time. Knowing your limits. So you want to investigate those issues using the audit tool and drill through. The limits of what you have today aren't necessarily the limits that you have tomorrow. So whenever you think about putting FDMEE into a business case or into an architecture, you want to think about this from an audit perspective using drill through as well. So the last is pretty simple. So look for opportunities to improve and then just go ahead and improve. Make that step. You want to keep it down to the basics. You're collecting information, you're transforming information. You want to look at synchronizing your data for all financial sources in your entire company. So we're done with the presentation, so thank you so much, everybody, and thanks for taking the time out to hear about Oracle FDMEE. Contact me directly at Caballero at Performance Ideas. You can send me any hard questions or super hard questions, really hard questions, send them over to Greg Olma. His info is right here posted on this deck. So, Greg, thanks for having me as part of the education series. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Cullen, for presenting today. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. Again, our contact information is displayed on your screen. Thank you for joining us, and have a great day.